record, share the screen. Okay. So we looked at the array. Let me see. You guys, I don't know if you guys can see me or not. You might prefer not seeing me. I'll leave it be. I see a little blue light. Oh well. All right. Can you guys see my screen okay? Okay, awesome. All right, so we've got, we looked at the basics of the array, and that's a pretty simple thing. We've already talked about that. Let's look at some other things that we can do with it that make it how we're going to work with it, because arrays are a little bit different, and they're a little bit different in a lot of different ways, which make it exciting. That's the nicest way of putting it. All right, so the first thing we want to know is, if you remember when we talked about functions a couple weeks ago, one of the things we talked about is we have the option of passing a variable by reference. And what that means is, if we pass a variable by reference to a function as one of its arguments, then that original variable can be changed inside of the application. And that's great as far as that goes. The problem is that you can change that original calling function, or that calling variable, excuse me. With arrays, because that data has to be in a contiguous piece of memory, and because when C++ was designed, it wasn't uncommon for computers to have a megabyte of RAM. So you could quickly run out of RAM. It's not like you've got today where I've got 16 gigabytes of RAM in my system. You know, back then, if you had a megabyte or 2 megabytes of RAM, that was a lot of RAM. So because of it, arrays are always passed by reference. The other reason why is, if I had a large array and I had to duplicate all those values, it would take time to duplicate it. And so you wouldn't want that if you had a 100 element array. So it just simplified that process. Let's take a look at how that's going to get used in an example, and how we can use it for our advantage and kind of against us. So let me switch over to Visual Studio here. Oops, I'm going to create a global. Okay, so I have a array here of temps. They're doubles of array size. Ta-da! Okay. I'm going to create a function, so I'm going to create a function prototype real quick. It's going to be a void, and I'm going to do an array init. I have an array variable, and then I'm going to do an array size. Oops. Okay. So it's very common. One of the things that we're going to do is, we're almost always going to pass in the size of an array to a function that's going to be being past that array. That way we know how big the array is. We don't want to make assumptions, so we can, like I said, go outside that memory space. That's bad. Inside my function, I'm going to have something like this, and I'm just going to create a for loop. I is going to be less than array size, and then I'll say something like I++. And then, oops, it's not called temps, it's called array. At I, I'm going to assign this a value. I'm going to say rand modulus 1000, and then we'll divide by 10.0. You might say, well, why am I doing this? Well, I'm going to give her a random number. It's going to be a nice large number. Find the modulus of 1000. That's going to give me a value between 0 and 999, but it's an integer. I'm storing doubles, so I'll divide it by 10. And that's going to give me a much, much smaller number. That's going to be a floating point number, or floating point, in this case, a double. So I should be happy with this. If I go and build this, you should get a warning, if I remember correctly. Oh, sure. Of course, now it's not going to give me a warning. Ah, there it is. Nope, that's not the warning I was expecting. Every once in a while, you'll get a weird warning that, oh, I remember why it's not giving me this time. If I did this, it'd give me a warning. I just want to show you what this warning is. No, it's still not giving it to me. Why isn't it giving it to me?
You muted yourself again.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. So, it would if you use a 4-byte variable with an 8-byte variable, it will every once in a while give you this warning message saying, hey, we're going to have to upsize this variable for you. Are you sure you want to do this? And the answer is yes. So you just go in and you kind of go through that process. It's not that big a deal. It does that part for you, but you can specify it if you need to. So instead of using a floating point, you can use a double, or instead of using an integer, you can use a long, things like that. All right, so here I have my array temps, and I'm going to go in and initialize my array. So I'm just going to call array init. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in my array. So temps. I do not need to pass in the array brackets or anything like that. I'm passing the whole array. So I'm just using that variable name. And then I need to specify my array size, because I've defined it here. And this is what's going to let me know how am I going to move through my array and know when to end. Well, I've got this constant value, so I'll pass that. Now, when I do this, unfortunately, I'm not going to see how big my array is. I'm not going to see these results. So I want to create something just to print out a random value. So let me create a function real quick to do that. Void at random array size. Might look kind of familiar. We're going to make a little bit of a change here. So I'm going to say something like int random equals rand modulus array size. Random, cannot type today. Okay. Now if I go and I run this, it gives me my value 11 is 14.5. I'm going to duplicate this a few times just so we can kind of see some different values. No, I forgot something. Let's just put an indel there and make it easier to read. Okay, so it gave me different random values. They're kind of different orders. They start to go up, then they go down, they go up, they go down. Each one of them has different values, and that's kind of what I was expecting, right? This is what I was expecting. This kind of looks like last week's temperatures, last couple of weeks' temperatures, just kind of going everywhere. But we can see how we're pulling these values. We gave it initial random value data, which means that we were setting that array. Now, the problem is I may not want to set an array. I might be afraid of accidentally setting a value in a function for an array. And so I need to find a way around that. The easy way to, there's really, really easy way to do that. And that is I'm going to add a const here, okay? And this is just going to say, hey, this is a constant value now. I need to come up here in my prototype and do that too. But this is going to prevent me in my print random from changing a value. So for example, if I came down here and said array 5 equals 83.4, give it just a second and I've got an error. And this is just letting us know, hey, expression must be a modifiable L value. The L value in an array, or excuse me, in any variable, you have what's called L values and R values. One is the memory where it's stored at, and one is the value of data that's being held there. Because we've said this array is a constant, we're saying you can't change those elements. So we still pass by reference, but we're saying temporarily, this is a constant variable and we're not going to let you make a change to it. So it's a huge, huge advantage, and saves us from potential issues where we might step on some value. All we have to do, the only change we make to our whole code to do that is we specify, hey, this is a const, and then we got to specify it up here inside of our prototype as well. If we go and we run that, it runs exactly the same way because we're only affecting that one function. That way we can still modify and array's values in other places. So that's just kind of a FYI of how that's working and why it's working like that. Okay, come back down here. So this is our arrays, and we've talked about the arrays and making changes and doing stuff and preventing changes to an array argument. The last thing we need to know is that C++ does not allow you to return a value, an array value from a function. Okay, you can return a single value. Arrays, remember, are multiple elements. So just keep that in mind. That's a real important thing you gotta be aware of and tracking of. Okay. What I'm gonna do right now, we've got about 15 minutes left. Okay, we're going to talk about how we're going to use arrays and some basics how we're going to use it. We're going to talk about that on Thursday. So that we're going to talk about on Thursday. We're going to talk about our C strings on Thursday. What I want you all to know, just saw a couple of you guys come in a little bit late. We're trying to start right around 11 o'clock. That's Eastern time. So if you're in a different time zone, you do need to kind of make that transition. But I'm also recording these. That way, I'm going to try to post these up on YouTube or something. So if you have to miss for whatever reason, I know we're going to have some technology issues. If you're on campus and things are running behind and whatnot, hopefully you'll be able to still be able to view things that way. So we're going to work on that. Keep a heads up. I will be posting some more information online with how to get a hold of me, communicate, and assignments and stuff like that. Any quick questions before we sign off for today? All right. Well, thank you all for attending our first online class. This is, I don't know if it's the first one you guys have done or not. It's my first one as far as this goes with our transition, but we'll be working and going forward as best we can. I will talk to you all later. Thank you very much.